Town's first attempt to pave the streets didn't come until 1914, when the town board purchased new stone crushing equipment for paving process called macadamizing, and it was named after a Scotsman named John L. McAdam. The process involved a layering of various sized stones with a binding agent of stone dust and water. The surface was then supposed to be sprayed with tar or asphalt. The plan was for the farmers to bring the rock from their fields into town to be crushed and laid down. The work started at the corner of Rittenhouse Avenue and Broad Street and continued for only a few blocks before it came to an abrupt halt and was abandoned. Apparently, the workmen had first failed to properly prepare the roadway, and then they failed to roll each layer of rock before putting down the next layer. The next attempt to improve the streets didn't come until 1917, so 3 years later, when the town contracted to pave 8 streets in the commercial district with brick. 4 blocks of Rittenhouse Avenue from Front to 3rd Street, 1 block of Manypenny Avenue from Broad to 2nd Street, Broad Street from Manypenny to Rittenhouse Avenue, and 2nd Street from Manypenny to Rittenhouse, then finally the 1st Street from Rittenhouse to Washington Avenue. In addition to the brick paving, a group of businessmen raised money to create a new street light system on Rittenhouse from Broad to Front Street, to create a white way with 150-watt lights on ornamental steel poles lining each side of the street. 3 years later, 1920, the town paved several more streets with brick, including Front Street from Rittenhouse to Washington, 1st Street from Rittenhouse to Manypenny, 2 more blocks of Manypenny from 1st to 2nd Street and from Broad to 3rd Street, Broad Street from Rittenhouse to Washington, and then, interestingly enough, 3 blocks from 6th Street from Wilson to Rittenhouse. That's where Highway 13 comes in. That is the street where all the movers and the shakers had their houses. And so the excuse that they made was that they needed that because that was the commercial district where people were coming in from Ashland, and they'd come down into town that street. The problem with that explanation is that they never completed the stretch down Rittenhouse Avenue to connect it. The next change to the surfacing of the streets came during the Depression as part of the federal work projects in Bayfield. That was between 1936 and 1944. Starting in 1936 and continuing through 1944, culverts and drainage systems were installed, and unpaved streets were graded and graveled. Many of the unpaved streets were also blacktopped after the city council offered property owners an opportunity to have their individual streets treated with blacktop at a minimum cost. So the city would kick in some of the money, and then the private owners would have to pay in another half of the cost.